Hello, Mr. Renegade Phoenix here. Today I'm going to be talking about two books which are almost always compared next to each other because they're very similar in both plots and themes and essentially the concept of them. The first one is The Hunger Games, which was this year's big hit when it was a film, and the other one is 1999's Battle Royale in Japanese, which was written in 1996 actually, but close enough. Both books are similar, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to first of all compare them and then review them. Yeah, if you want to know, this one's better. Battle Royale is better, but that's not to say this one's bad. It's actually still really good. But that's my quick thing. First of all, if you've seen the films, because I have films on both, if you've seen the films only, I will be mentioning the films later, but mostly concentrating on the book. So, yeah. And if you've only seen the films, shame on you. Get more cultured, read the book. So that's it. So, okay, first thing I'm going to compare and talk about and review is... Okay, the plot. Well, they both have very good plots. This one has a strong plot, this one has a strong plot. I'm going to be honest, I prefer this book, but this one's a better plot. By plot, I aren't meaning the narrative, which is the way it's told, or who's telling, or the characters, or even the themes, right? I'm essentially talking about what goes from one step to the next and what keeps the story going. This doesn't quite have it. It loses a lot of momentum because throughout the book it basically becomes kill someone gets killed, talk, someone gets killed, talk, someone gets killed. That's basically it. It goes on like 400 pages, just that. It's not dull, it's all really interesting, but ultimately it's not a particularly mind-blowing plot. It's fairly bog standard. Not bog standard, it's more just repetitive. As for the twist at the end, at the end of this, it's a bit anticlimactic. Like, okay, so genius solution. No, it isn't. It's a kind of a bit of a, yeah, okay, how has no one ever thought of this before in the last 70 years? And it kind of, a lot of things kind of just rely on somebody having easy, or this character knows from his uncle this. It pulls, the plot's pulled forward in Battle Royale by literally the characters learned this from before this period, which is coincidental. What are the chances of this character before he entered the game would happen to have something that would be useful at this exact moment in this exact point of the game? It kind of becomes rather laboured. That's my only problem. But aside from that, it's still a great plot. It's still really well paced and really well thought out. It's just ultimately not as engaging as this one, because Hunger Games doesn't have a great plot. It's not as complex or as well thought out as this one, but it's more simplicity. It just follows one character for the start, so it's not really going anywhere. It's kind of just go forward, and it attempts to be more natural. Instead of we need this to move forward, we will do something. It's we will just keep it as realistically as possible. Yeah, sort of. It's not that it's a bad plot. It's not a great. It's not essentially. It's not massively better than Battle Royale, but it's at least. But the thing that really gets it is the twist. There's so many twists in the Hunger Games that it smashes Battle Royale's plot out of the water. Like you read the first chapter and then there's a big twist. That kind of changes the dynamic of the characters. Then there's another one after like every 9 chapters or so. There's a big twist. And that really works. It's easy and effective. You also get the feeling that you're sticking with it. So ultimately, you want to stick with this book more than you do with this one, because this one you stick with it. Yet the story. This one, the plot itself isn't as laboured. It's more well thought out and more just going just to entertain you, just to wow, and this bit about whoa, what a good twist. Whoa, the characters have changed now. It's not thoughtful, but it works better. Yeah, slightly. I'm leaning toward this one. Probably at the time I do say this one's better. Base of characters, well, I'll be honest, poor. Very poor. Okay, so we have like Katniss. Katniss is a good character. She's likeable, she's relatable, and from her perspective, everything seems to work fine. I have to be fair, she's really well thought out as a character, and Suzanne Collins does a good job actually talking about this character. What this book doesn't do well is any other character. I mean, sure, some characters do have a lot of things. Haymitch is probably the second best character because he's at least explained, and the way they connect as characters makes sense. It allows the book to expand, but otherwise, no, none of them do. Like, all I want to District 1, 2, what about District 3, District 7? They're not giving anything for them, or they're not even explained fully, so you don't really know why they're doing what they're doing or how they're doing it. So ultimately, it kind of means the characters, aside from Katniss, just don't have anything to offer. We don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So ultimately it makes her a likeable character and the others not really likeable. It kind of destroys all the characters that they could have used because they could have really told them well. Like a prime example of using a lot of characters and giving each of them motivation is this book, because this book does it perfectly. Every character is motivated, every character is explained, every character has a good background. They're also realistic. I can really imagine all of these people existing. I mean, yeah, I could tell you more about each of these 42 characters than I could about any of like the 20 in here, like the 27 in here. Despite the fact that these 27, there's less of them, but they're still not as focused. This one is about people. This one is about fictional characters because there's nothing in these. Most of the characters are just cardboard. They're to enhance the plot and to give us a reason to support Katniss, but ultimately to do nothing else. This book gives us characters to believe in, to relate to, and to at least question other people that we see in real life. Hands down, this one's characters are just stronger as a group of people than this one. Okay, well, the setting. This one kind of isn't a question of which setting's best, it's a case of what setting do you prefer, because they're basically the same story, by the start and description below. Because the thing is that this one, they're both dystopian, they're both set in futures, or versions of a future. This one is a more fictional, dystopian style future. This one is also, this is a more realistic approach, a more parallel world, darker setting than Hunger Games ever is. But it depends on you after, because this one is better than just reading a book, because it allows you to take a step back from the characters. You know it's not real, you know it's not meant to be. It doesn't, it's nice if you just want to read a book, a story. If you want something to think about, this one has a better setting, because ultimately it allows you to take in what's going on, believe it, and allow you to at least admire what's going on as a strength, because you can imagine happening in real life. So it's also down to what you prefer. Personally, I'm for the realistic approach, but if you don't want the realistic approach, this works just as well, because as a setting, it still works. It's not about setting the characters can still do what they do. This plot could be used in this setting, and vice versa. It wouldn't make a damn difference. It's a case of what setting do you prefer. So the narrative, that's basically how it's told. From my perspective, narrative from one character, narrative from like 30 characters. Right, I don't need to explain which one works better because it's going to be this one. This one character has a thought process going all the way through the book. That's at least a good idea, just because it means that the book's more focused at the start. You don't have to jump around. But on the downside, you don't get a full perspective of what's going on. And also, you kind of have a limited view. You don't know the ins and outs of the politics or anything, because you only know it through Katniss and Katniss only. With this, you know everything. If one character goes, oh my god, how did so-and-so die? You've already read it, you know how they died. That gives you a kind of this, it means that the book feels more complete. It doesn't feel like anything's left out. And it justifies its 600-page length doing this. This does have a good narrative, don't get me wrong, it's done well. But ultimately, it's not really, it's just a narrative that works. This one is an original narrative, it's not really been done before. It's complex and it's original, and it's actually a strong one because you actually do get to feel the motivation of every character. No one is left out, no one is kind of left on the run. It's all from the viewpoint of so many characters, there's so many different ways that the author just brings it all to life. Here, they bring one viewpoint to life, but I think it's a better achievement to have brought 40 characters to life than it is to bring one to life. Okay, so the violence. Well, the hot topic, basically, issue is this is like strong violence, gory, blood, lots of details. This is toned down to a massive degree. Sure, all the same amount of violence probably happens, but in this book, oh, they turn away when it happens, or they don't see it, or half of them aren't even seen by the one character narrative, so you don't get to see the violence. Now listen, I'm not saying violence is good, but there should have been more violence in this, definitely more violence in this. Honestly, because it actually made it better that this was a violent book, because the more violence is in it, the more the more disturbed you get. If you're disturbed when you watch it, you know it's worked. When I read this, I'm finishing that, like, that's a really freaky thing. That's left me with a thing in my mind. That is why it works, because I know after I read this, I was distinctly going, whoa, if it disturbs you, we've got a message out there. This feels like it's been toned down because I want to aim it at teenagers. This feels like you read it and it feels like the violence has been missing just because they don't want to disturb 12-year-olds, right? Well, tough, disturb them. If it makes it better, disturb them. If it gets a message out there, disturb them. Why Hunger Games turned out, I don't know, because it wouldn't have actually harmed the story at all to include it. This is realistic, that's how it would happen, that's how, if you think we were going to do it, it's going to be like this, then you deserve to be deluded, because this is how it will actually be like if it happens. So yeah, you know, the more violence in it, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because the more violence in there, the more disturbed you are. The more disturbed you are reading it, the better it is at getting its message across. The politics of these books are really simple. They both seem to be against governments forcing kids to kill each other. Genius idea. Hunger Games, I don't get why they're bothered. It's kind of like a half-assed attempt to bring politics into anything. Okay, sure, okay, so the more things are brought up, right? Dude, if you read this, you go thinking, is it right to kill kids? Right, that's what you're deciding, but it does it really sloppily. It sort of starts to bring up the themes and then doesn't really finish them off. Okay, for example, like, it seems abjectly certain that it all goes on 100% the capital is pure evil, right? There's no shade of grey, there's no like element of moral choices. They are evil, right? But then read the sequels and no, the Hunger Games doesn't seem as it seems to be. For example, the rebellion itself is not exactly the most peaceful thing ever, and while I'm not saying it shouldn't, I'm not saying it should have been peaceful, because you wouldn't work if you weren't violent. You know, the moral messages brought up and never talked about, it kind of seems like a cop-out, because by focusing just on Katniss, if Katniss chooses, you know what guys, I hate so-and-so, well, then we have to go along with it. This book should bring it up and make us think about it. This one does. This one doesn't tell you. Sure, it's obviously implied that the Japanese government is evil in this. And sure, it's also obviously implied that it's first of all, the second film and things are anti-American, so it's not exactly pro-government, but you at least, it isn't questioned, it isn't for, I mean, okay, sure, it's at least brought up here, they're there, if you understand it, all the things are there, but they're not brought up. And the thing that most annoys me is, this is aimed at teenagers. Teenagers are the ones that you should be pressing these thoughts to suggest, do you think this is right? There is an age in which you should be forcing people to think like this. Rather than do that, it just sort of mentions them, and if you're smart enough to figure it out, you're smart enough to figure it out, otherwise it doesn't tell you. Here, you're at least told of everything. I mean, I don't like how it does it, because I think it forces it down your throat, and by quoting rock lyrics and stuff, it doesn't really work. But it at least brings them up to a point where it's obvious that there's something to think about. Here, you should leave this book thinking about it, but you don't, because it doesn't mention it, it doesn't cover it, and it just kind of leaves you going, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that Katniss is good. You should be questioning the morality of everything, as you do in this book. You don't question any morality of anyone in this, because you've just forcing a plate in front of you. Katniss is good. Here, the government is bad. Yeah, sure, it's forced down your throat, but it's brought up the politics. Here it hasn't. This one handles it so much better. It doesn't handle it flawlessly, it's still a really bad way of handling it, so I'd argue both of them do it badly. But this one at least makes an attempt, unlike this. Originality. Well, tough one this. Which one's more original? Okay, I'll start with this. This book was written in 1996. There's obviously references in this book to it's not this is an original idea, sort of, but it's not. First start, there's many references to Lord of the Flies. This is obviously inspired by Lord of the Flies. Secondly, things like George Orwell quotes in the beginning of the book kind of also make it unreal, because it's kind of obviously been inspired by these, but at least it's been inspired and they've actually made something from it. It's original mostly, that it's inspired, but it is original. Hunger Games, I don't know where I stand this, because, okay, if we believe Suzanne Collins, she never heard of Battle Royale till she made her book, and never said, oh, this is like Battle Royale. Now, it basically depends on whether you take her word for it or not. Okay, here's the argument for, if you take her word for it, and she never saw it, this is original as hell, because nothing is like this, aside from this, right? So if she thought of it individually, and it's a great idea, in which case it's a tie, because I think they're both as original as each other. If we say that, but here's my thing, how popular is this? This is a cult film. It's been a film, it's been a book, it's been a manga, it's been everywhere. It's relatively famous, the concept is controversial, making it even more famous. To say this book is really well known, I'm surprised and would be shocked if Suzanne Collins had never, ever heard of this. Okay, so I'm assuming she hasn't. In this case it's a tie. But otherwise, it's just like she copied Battle Royale, is what I'm saying I think happened. Or she was inspired by it. Now, I'm not saying that's true, and if it isn't true, I apologise. But she may have thought individually, which I'm not going to give a judgment on this one. I'm going to say it's a tie. But we're not for the fact I'm taking her word. Far more original. Both films are good. Neither is as good as the book. Hunger Games is a weak film. It has a good plot, and it's because it's the book, and it's basically well structured. Here's my problem with it. First of all, something that applies to film, not the book, is cinematography. It's filmed like an art house student just wanted to do shaky cam for 2 hours. Nothing happens. It's just that's the camera work for you all the way through the film. That's annoying. Secondly, they have a habit of changing the film for no apparent reason. Things are different to the book significantly. not all of it's bad. Some of it has an improvement, some of it, but in general, what they've added is actually not particularly helping. Concentration on Gale's character is annoying, especially considering he's only in the start of the Hunger Games, but concentrate all the way through seems a bit of a weird thing to do. The love story, I'm glad it wasn't a big concentration in the film, but wasn't expanded enough. Ambiguous ending seems to have gone. The random commentators that annoy me throughout the entire film. This, ignore all that. It's still a fairly good film. It's not well made, but it works. It's entertaining. It has a good plot and it works well. By contrast, Battle Royale film is also a disappointment in that for some reason things have changed. I don't like the idea that some of the kids aren't from the class, because that kind of makes it harder to see the motivations for those characters. And also, I don't get why. It doesn't really seem to have added anything. The only reason I can think of is that they don't want for Sugar, or I can't speak Japanese, or whatever that kid's called that helps the two main characters, is that they didn't want him to no an explanation for him, because you can't explain what the characters are thinking in films, which is, and all the details of his life of explaining thought in the book. That's the only thing I can think of. It doesn't really seem like a good reason to do it, because it still doesn't work, because effectively it means you're reading it, you're watching it going, but who is this kid? You're not going, he's a classmate, you're going, who is this random person? It also makes me think a bit unfair. Why would you allow a psychopath in when it's clearly supposed to be a test? It doesn't really add much to it. It seems like a random factor. The only thing, but it's still better made than Hunger Games. I'll tell you, this better film right now. It is a better film. It has a better plot and it really expands it. But it's cut out so much. The character motivations have gone. Some things that have added are poor. But the one that with the teacher was a really good idea. The teacher was really nice, and his relationship with Noriko was at least interested. It really built it up to a good point. That's it. That's the only good thing that's been added. But effectively, it's a pretty good film. It's more faithful than Hunger Games adaptation, but it's not a purely genius film. It's a good film. It's filmed, but the camera work is really good for a start. It does seem to look like a B movie in part for some reason. The quality doesn't seem amazing, but that may have just been the one I was watching. Yeah, I thought that's my view. They're both good films. In my opinion, Hunger Games film 6 out of 10, Battle Royale film 8 out of 10. Okay, both of these have sequels of sorts. The first one is, I'll talk about is Hunger Games. Okay, Hunger Games is a good book, right? Sequel, Catching Fire. Catching Fire isn't that amazing, if I'm honest. It's okay. I would be fair. The first third of this book is probably, I would argue, as good, if not better, than the whole Hunger Games. After that, it becomes a rehash of book one. It's exactly the same sort of thing, with weaker characters than in the first one, and it's not exactly interesting anymore. It's kind of become a bit dull, and it's not as inspired as the first one at all. The third one, massive improvement on book two, almost as good as the first one. I would argue just under the strength of the first two, because on the strength of the first one, rather, not first two. The second one was awful. This one is more focused. Again, this one is a worthy book as a sequel, because it ends on a good, and how I would like it to end. I don't like the twists are good, but there are a lot of this is the one with the most political themes in it, and I like this. This is the only one I think brings them up in a suitable way. The first two don't. The problem is most people seem to have just read book one, because I don't think the sequels are really needed, if I'm honest, because the first one ended it pretty well. Second one is pointless as anything, because nothing happens basically, apart from it's just, the second was just to get from book one to book three. It needs something in the middle. That's basically all number two is. It doesn't actually bring anything new to the table. The third one is at least a worthy sequel, and I would argue it brings up political things better than Battle Royale does. But we're talking about that's it. I'm talking about the first book in general, not the third book. if I were to give if I were to give the first book 10 out of 10, this would be 7 out of 10. This would be 9 out of 10. Almost as good. Okay, Battle Royale sequel. They haven't done the only sequel they ever made was the sequel to the film. It's generally considered to be awful as anything. It's not. It's bad. Yes, it's cheesy and it's cliched, but I don't think it's bad. I think it brings up political themes better than both the first book and the first film. In that, to cast the main character as a terrorist and then show him do a 9/11 equivalent attack is strong, but it's out there. It really gets something out there. And sure, a lot of the first half is a bit random and there's clearly things copied from Saving Private Ryan. But Battle Royale 2 Requiem is still good. I would argue. I still think it's a good film. Not great though. If I gave the first film a 10 out of 10, I would give this a 6 out of 10. Yeah, that would be it. It's a good film. It's a sequel. It's not bad. It's not awful. It's severely underrated because people in the hate for being cheesy and stuff. But it's cheesy, yeah. But it brings some questions, and it's still legitimately interesting as an idea. Okay, conclusion. Right, I'll be perfectly honest. I'll go for it first of all. I'll go for each plot point first of all here. Okay, well, plot, strong plot, characters, few good ones, otherwise not that good. Setting, very good. Narrative, it works well on its style, but a better narrative could have been chosen. But it does it perfectly. What it's trying to do, but it's hardly inspired. Violence could have been. It doesn't really hammer home as disturbing as Battle Royale. More messages seem to have gone. I'm not a big. I think this is unoriginal because I fairly certain he did copy Battle Royale, but I can't be certain, so I'll say originality questionable. The film, bad adaptation of a good book, if I'm honest. And this would get a rating of 8 out of 10. Its sequels would get. This one would get 6 out of 10, and this one would get 8 out of 10 as well. Okay, well, Battle Royale, if I'm summing this up, plot, rather simplistic at the end of the day. It's not as complex as everyone seems to think. The characters are really, really good, really thought out, really motivated. Their setting is great, the narrative is really well written. The violence is disturbing enough to leave you scarred. The politics of this are brought up well, if forced down your throat a little bit too much. It's really original. The film is still good, not as good as this. The sequel is poor, but still watchable, and at least it's not as bad as everyone says. And I think the fans are at least appreciative of our fiction in general. So, my review for this one: book 9 out of 10, film 8 out of 10, Hunger Games film 6 out of 10, sequel film 5 out of 10. Oh yeah, but do not get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is an awful book. If I was putting this based on most teenage fiction, I'd give this 10 out of 10, because for teenage fiction, it's pretty good. It's stronger than most. It is a really strong book on its own, and I think in conclusion, I have to be honest, both are good. Read both. Battle Royale is better, but the Hunger Games is sort of worthwhile read. If you're aged between 12 and 16, it's a must read. If you're 16 plus, stick to Battle Royale. It is better, and it is ultimately the more fulfilling of the two. Bye. That's all I've got to say on the matter.